everybody, and they go into those lower emotional states, starts to have these thoughts that creep in that say, well, there's something wrong with you. You are the dysfunction here. You are the problem and you need to be fixed. And unfortunately, there are vast industries of professionals out there who are very quick to give us labels when we feel this way. And then our life starts to revolve around them. And the only way that we can move forwards is to have some kind of medication or therapy or technique. One of the reasons I have refused to go to therapy or anything of that kind is because there's nothing wrong with having a feeling that doesn't feel very nice. It's like saying, well, there's something wrong with the rain or there's something wrong with the snow. Well, no, it's a natural part of the season of life. And the second we determine that there's something dysfunctional about the way that we feel and we decide that we need to fix it, then we're stuck with it. How can it possibly change if we're constantly identifying with it? And how have we determined at some point that that's helpful? And it's occurred to me at some point today that maybe there's value in that. Maybe there's value in those feelings. Now, of course there is. I have to come to that realization myself, as do you. And obviously if you're in some kind of therapy or you're going through some process of management or coping, I'm not telling you there's anything wrong with that. You're free to make your own decisions. It just seems to me personally that the second we determine something is dysfunctional, then we wage a war against it. And history tells us that anything we wage war against seems to become larger and stronger because we're empowering it with our attention. So maybe we don't need to empower it by waging war against it. We just need to shine a light on it and acknowledge its existence in our lives and continue moving forwards, albeit maybe more slowly. And I find myself in this position right now. I don't have a clear path forwards. I don't have any stable source of income. In England, we have this thing called the job seekers allowance, where you have to go and register as someone who's seeking work and jump through some hoops, and the government gives you a £90 a week or something, which, if you live in anything other than your own car or a tent, then effectively does nothing. But that's the state of affairs, and I've applied for many jobs, and I'm pretty skilled at what I do, and have been in continuous employment for about 20 years, and nothing. And I think, is there something I'm missing here? Is there an opportunity for me to see something differently? Is there an opportunity for me to lean more closely into this feeling of stuckness, or this lack of direction, and to consider that maybe there's some value in this for me, but also to share the process, or to share however I can articulate it? Because I think so much of the time when we hear about these things, we're either hearing about them from someone who's trying to help us get over them as quickly as possible, essentially saying that there's something wrong with us and we need to be fixed, right? Or someone who's just stuck in it and they're suffering. And largely, I'm not really suffering. Like, suffering is being at odds with your experience, and I am where I am. That doesn't really mean I like it. I don't love feeling the way that I feel. I'm not reveling in it, for sure. But there's no narrative inside largely that says there's something wrong with this and it needs to be changed as quickly as possible. I think if anything, I would just like a bit more direction. But then maybe the direction is to be here. How many of us give ourselves the grace of being able to sit with these feelings when they arise. And of course, how many of us have the opportunity, like I do at the moment, to do so? And some of us have to go into work, and we have to be parents, and we have to show up as this like, oh yeah, I have everything figured out, and I know all the answers, and I can take charge and responsibility. And that's great sometimes, because that encourages us to step up, and we can do so directly enough that that feeling kind of passes of its own accord because we lose sight of it. But then there are other people who are really struggling through it, and I've been on both sides of the fence, right? I've been in the corporate roles where I have to talk to people really high up in the company, and I'm just having one of those days where I want to be hiding in bed and doing nothing, and that's hard. Because obviously, you know, I feel like they see that. I feel like they can see straight through me. And in any moment, they're going to turn around and tell me that I don't know what I'm doing, or that I'm a fraud, or that, you know, oh, there's something wrong with you because you don't feel as good as I do. And most of the time, well, in fact, all of the time, as far as I can remember, that's never happened. So it's funny, you know, the things that we're afraid of, most of the time, never really come to fruition. Most of the time, the things that really challenge us are things that are completely unexpected. They come from over here when our focus is over there somewhere. You know, maybe I need to hear that too. Because I'm looking at this thing over here that says, no one wants to employ you, and you have no value or worth, and you're going to run out of money, and you're going to be on the street. And that's the narrative. Obviously, I'm not paying that much attention to it, but I'm conscious that it's there. And there's a million other ones that say, actually, do you know what? Maybe life isn't so bad. And I feel the value of being able to articulate these things is, for you as viewers, if you've stuck with me this far, you know, I appreciate that. And if it's the first thing you're watching that I've ever produced, then I appreciate that too. The value of this is being able to articulate the experience honestly, right? And I'm really leaning into that, because I feel like so much of the time we don't know. No one tells us what we're experiencing is valid. Doesn't necessarily mean it's the only experience we're ever going to have, and that our perspective is absolutely true, but in the moment it's true. And no one has the right to tell you that there's anything wrong with you. Only you have the right to do that. But I'd question how helpful that is. And to sit with it and not try and run away from it. And just to recognize actually that, yeah, it's painful. But so is going to the gym. So is learning a new skill. So is trying to ride a bike. Everything in life that involves some degree of growth has a degree of discomfort or pain attached to it. For some reason, when it concerns the mental realm, or the emotional realm, we immediately lose sight of that. And it becomes a problem that needs to be fixed. And I would love to change that. Imagine how your life would look if you just accepted that sometimes you're not going to feel that great, and that there's nothing that you need to do because there's nothing wrong with you. In the same way that when the weather rains or it's sunny, you change your clothes accordingly. And you know at some point it will change. Maybe for those of us lucky enough to live in Wales, like I do, you have a wardrobe that's mostly for wet weather clothes, but the sun comes out from time to time, as it does today, and we can be thankful for that. I'm also reminded, again, as life has continued to do over the years, that we're all creating, and we can create something out of the materials we're working with. It doesn't have to be bad, you know. If I don't feel that good, I can still create something from that. I can still grab my camera, come out, get some coffee and express what's here, rather than wait for the rain to pass, so to speak, and then just share the good stuff. And I think that's that's valuable too, because you probably, again, if you're anything like me, you're probably sick of that. Just hearing people going, oh, life is so great and I've got everything figured out. And by the way, here's the right 10 steps that will guarantee you success and positivity and harmony. Like, it's BS. It's BS. No one can guarantee that anything they can tell you is going to stop you from having days when you just don't feel that great. Even the spiritual teachers will say that if you listen to them closely enough. The idea isn't to navigate through life in such a way that you never experience discomfort. It's to recognize that in perspective, discomfort has its place. Maybe I don't know that entirely because I'm still fighting it sometimes. But is that not helpful? I mean, tell me. If I'm saying something that's helpful, then do let me know. And if you're at odds with it in some way, then of course, I respect that too. And I'm not here to tell anyone that they're wrong. I just want to shine a light on something that illuminates it in a more constructive way than so many of the people out there would choose to do. And the voice of pain or discomfort always seems to feel like a really personal one. As the mind will tell us, you've done something wrong. It's because of something you did. You're a burden. You made this happen between your parents. You did this thing at work and now everyone's inconvenienced. Or you said this to your partner and now they don't love you anymore. Like, it always feels personal, doesn't it? But it's funny when you start to notice these things, and the next time it happens, it's like, oh, I've seen this voice before. Or I've seen it in others. And I can see when someone is hurting because it looks and feels very personal. It feels like the things that they're saying are a personal attack on me, when actually maybe they just feel that way because they feel like I did last week or last year or last month. So we have this ability to be compassionate rather than going, oh, he's just effed up. You know, leave him alone. He's depressed. He's just having a down day. Just leave him to it. He's broken. Like, how is that helpful? The reason I record these things outside is because it gives them a bit more space to expand into. A tendency I have when I feel a bit stuck is to just withdraw, because I feel at times like everyone knows how I feel and like I have no value and no one wants to engage with me. And of course, I don't stay there for really long periods of time, but I do have a tendency to fall into that space without realizing it. And when I come outside, I get to appreciate, turn this around, I get to appreciate this natural environment, and I come to this space quite often because I just love the perspective of being able to see all these different shades of green and the river and to hear the birds. And I've always been someone who appreciates nature, but I've always appreciated nature from the seat of a car. And there's a road here, and I don't know if you can necessarily see it, but it's just a really nice stretch of road. I think the juxtaposition of those two things just reminds me what's important to me in life, and to continue moving in the direction of the things I love, as well as doing my best to navigate through all the stuff that I can't necessarily find love for all the time. I'm sure you have places like this, and even if they're not places you can immediately get to, then they're probably accessible on the internet. But from time to time it does help to have a change of scenery, to go somewhere slightly unfamiliar. And even though this environment is familiar to me, every time I come here it's different, because the weather is different. Different cars going by, different times of day. There's this one of those things up there in the sky, I can't remember what they're called. Paraglider, is that what it's called? Don't see many of those around here. And sometimes that's just enough to forget that life is not quite as bad as our minds would have us think. It's certainly not as bad as those so-called professionals would have us believe. We're not as broken as we think we are. Not as lost as we think we are. Our lives have meaning and value and purpose, and sometimes, or oftentimes, we can lose sight of that, as I have. But maybe, just for today, I can give myself permission to stop seeking purpose or meaning or value and just be here. Or maybe that's enough. If it's enough for you, fantastic. Do let me know. And as always, I hope to see you again soon.